just trying to do their jobs.
Will, don't get all bent out of shape.
Man, you ain't learned nothing this weekend, did you?
Yesterday with no resistance.
Q, it's not a stupid ring. It means something to me.
I just want you to do the best you can. That's all.
I'll try, Dad.
Did you know some of the most emotional scenes on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air weren't scripted? For example, remember this scene where Will finally breaks after holding it together?
How come you don't want me, man?
And the funny thing is, this isn't the only time black TV shows hit us with raw, unscripted magic. From George Jefferson dancing in the Jeffersons, to Marlon and Shawn on the Wayans Bros today.
I'll be a good girl from now on.
We are going to show you 20 of the most unforgettable, unscripted scenes in black TV. Starting with this classic heartbreaker from Fresh Prince.
Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's daddy coming home, you know? Who needs him?
This scene from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air still hits like a ton of bricks and has fans feeling all the emotions every time. It's the episode where Will's dad, Lou, shows up after ghosting him for years, only to disappear on him again. At first, Will's all tough, brushing it off like he's unfazed. He even tells Uncle Phil all the stuff he's done without his dad. Like, look, I'm thriving without him. But as he keeps talking, you can see the cracks. Then comes the line, how come he don't want me, man? Will breaks down and Uncle Phil steps in with that big hug.
How come you don't want me, man?
Here's what makes it even more gut-wrenching. Will Smith wasn't just acting. Back then, he was still figuring out the heavy emotional stuff. And James Avery didn't just play Uncle Phil. He was that guy in real life too. He gave Will the support to pull off such a raw moment. Next, Jaleel White on Family Matters. Steve, played by Jaleel White, was the ultimate clumsy genius, always pulling off the impossible, being a disaster and totally lovable at the same time. From wrecking furniture to unleashing havoc on the Winslows, his oops moments were always laugh-out-loud funny.
I could have sworn I locked that door.
You did. I took the liberty of making my own key.
So picture this. Steve's on a ladder, probably trying to fix something or test out one of his over-the-top inventions. Then, bam, he takes a harder fall than planned. Here's the kicker. Jaleel White didn't even flinch. He rolled with it like a pro, staying 100% in character and turning an accidental slip into Urkel perfection. That's the magic of Jaleel White. He got Steve Urkel. Sure, Steve was clumsy, but he never let anything keep him down. Jaleel's quick thinking took a total accident and made it feel like it was all part of the plan. The audience ate it up too. Whether it was a live crowd or that classic sitcom laugh track, the reaction was big because it felt so natural. No one even realized the fall wasn't scripted. Next, John Amos on Good Times.
Gene, a gorgeous hunk of woman here.
John Amos had some serious beef with how Good Times changed over time. While the show originally balanced humor with real-life struggles, Amos felt it started leaning too much into silly jokes and stereotypes, especially with J.R.J., Jimmy Walker. J.R.J.'s over-the-top, catchphrase-heavy persona became the show's main focus, and Amos wasn't having it.
I felt too much emphasis was being put on JJ and his chicken hat and saying dynamite every third page, when just as much emphasis and mileage could have been gotten out of my other two children and the concomitant jokes and humor that could have come out of that.
He didn't hold back in calling out what he saw as the show's shift away from respecting the Evans family's hardships. His outspokenness didn't sit well with the producers, and by season 3, they parted ways. The tension on set during his last episodes was pretty noticeable, making his final moments even more emotional. James Evans' exit from the show, it was brutal. In a shocking turn, the family gets a telegram saying James died in a car crash while on a work trip. The scene where Florida, Esther Roll, reads the telegram and drops the iconic damn, 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 still goes down as one of TV's most heartbreaking moments. Next, Martin.
Said, Mama used to say, take your time, young
Tisha Campbell opened up about some pretty intense stuff that went down behind the scenes on Martin, claiming Martin Lawrence harassed her with verbal and emotional abuse. While she didn't get into all the details, it was clear she felt mistreated during their time together on set. Things got so bad that Tisha eventually refused to film with Lawrence on certain scenes, and a lot of their final moments together were either filmed separately or edited to keep them apart. The drama came out in the 90s, and everyone could see that the two stars weren't exactly getting along. The accusations were pretty serious, and there was a lot of buzz about how it affected the show's production. After the 5th season, Tisha left Martin, saying the work environment was toxic and damaging to her mental health. She even filed a lawsuit against the show, which was settled, but it was clear that her exit was tied to the issues with Lawrence.
Let's heal. Let's keep in touch. Let's not let all this time go by.
Fast forward to now, and both Tisha and Martin have talked about it and said they've worked through everything. Next, Jamie on the Jamie Foxx Show. There's this hilarious and low-key painful moment from the Jamie Foxx Show that's a total gem. In one episode, Jamie Foxx, playing Jamie King, decides to go all in on a backflip for a gag. And instead of using a stunt double, he goes for it himself. Well, he totally misjudged it and landed in the most awkward way. But because he's Jamie Foxx, he just brushed it off and kept going like nothing happened. This little screw-up just made the scene even funnier, because you could tell it wasn't supposed to go down like that. But Foxx turned it into part of the joke. His ability to keep the energy up and improvise on the spot was part of what made the show so great. That moment just added some extra realness to the comedy, showing how good he was at blending quick wit and physical humor without missing a beat. Next, Marlon on the Wayans Bros.
You trying to sabotage me? You trying to So I'm stupid now. This morning I was fat, now I'm stupid.
So there's this hilarious moment from the Wayans Brothers where Marlon Wayans totally eats it and trips over a couch. Instead of cutting it out, the directors were like, you know what? This works. They kept it in, and it ended up being perfect for the show's over-the-top slapstick humor. Marlon's whole thing was physical comedy, and his ability to roll with these unplanned moments is what made the show so fun to watch.
I'll be a good girl from now on.
His timing was spot on, and that accidental stumble just added to the chaos, making everything feel even more unpredictable and hilarious. Sometimes the best moments come from the stuff that wasn't planned, and this was a prime example of that. Marlon knew how to turn even a little mistake into a total comedy win. Next, George on the Jeffersons, Sherman Hemsley's dance moves. As George Jefferson on the Jeffersons were something else. Dude went all in with these high-energy, over-the-top routines that were totally his thing. He wasn't about stiff choreography. His moves were spontaneous and full of that signature Hemsley flair, making the show's funny moments even more memorable. But here's the kicker. Sometimes he'd go so hard with those dances that he'd end up pulling a muscle or tweaking something. It wasn't all smooth moves, but that's what made it work. Instead of playing it safe, he brought this raw, unfiltered energy that made George Jefferson's dancing hilarious and completely unique. Even with the mishaps, you couldn't help but love it because it was so real. Those unpredictable dances became a huge part of what made the show funny and iconic, and now they're one of the things people always remember about the Jeffersons. Hemsley's dedication to the bit, totally unmatched. Next, Queen Latifah on Living Single.
You made it.
Yep, pretty much got everything we wanted, didn't we?
So there's this hilarious moment from Living Single where Queen Latifah, aka Khadijah, and Kim Coles, aka Sinclair, were doing some physical comedy. The scene had them getting into a goofy struggle, but as it goes with slapstick humor, things got a little too real, and Queen Latifah ended up accidentally punching Kim Coles. Instead of cutting it out, the directors were like, you know what, let's keep it. And thank goodness they did, because it made the moment even funnier. Kim Coles, being the comedic genius she is, totally sold the punch and made it look like part of the gag. The whole thing felt super spontaneous and only amped up the humor. Queen Latifah later laughed about landing the punch, but gave major props to Kim for rolling with it. And Kim? She took it like a champ, embracing the moment and their natural on-screen chemistry. The accident wasn't just funny, it made their already hilarious friendship feel even more real and relatable. Next, Brandy on Moesha.
Baby, you know I don't care about him. I only care about us.
So why'd you bring it up with him?
So remember that intense breakup scene from Moesha? Well, get this. Brandy Norwood, aka Moesha, was actually going through her own breakup while filming it. Yup, her real-life heartbreak basically turned into the most raw and emotional scene on the show. In that scene, Moesha is dealing with a major relationship blow-up, and you can just feel the pain. It's not hard to tell that Brandy wasn't acting much. Her feelings of sadness and frustration were 100% real, and it made the scene hit different. It's like you're watching someone go through their own heartbreak, and it makes everything feel way more powerful.
Q, it's not a stupid ring. It means something to me.
What's crazy is that Brandy was juggling her music career and acting, yet she still pulled off this insanely emotional moment. She didn't just read lines, she felt them. And that's why the scene felt so personal. Brandy later mentioned how tough it was to film that scene when her emotions were all over the place. Next, Cliff and Theo on The Cosby Show.
Maybe you can just accept who I am and love me anyway.
Okay, so there's this super iconic moment from The Cosby Show where Bill Cosby, aka Cliff Huxtable, gives his son Theo, Malcolm Jamal Warner, a real talk speech about the real world. It's this father-son heart-to-heart where Cliff drops some hard-hitting advice about life, responsibility, and growing up. What makes this moment hit so hard? Well, it's partly because Bill Cosby didn't stick to the script. Yep, he went off-book and delivered the speech from the heart. And the best part? Malcolm Jamal Warner's reaction wasn't acting. It was real surprise, shock, and then understanding. That's what made it so powerful.
I just want you to do the best you can. That's all.
It wasn't just a scripted lecture. It felt like an actual conversation between a dad and his son, like something you'd hear in real life. The way Cosby spoke from the heart and Warner's genuine reaction gave the whole scene a raw, real feel that made it unforgettable. It's one of those moments where you're not just watching TV, you're feeling it. Next, My Wife and Kids.
He made his living doing stand-up, talking about us, talking about his children, just destroying us. And now, as a grown-up, I don't really care, but like I was a teenager and he made this like one bit. It was basically like that I would find any excuse to go up to the bathroom.
So there's this hilarious moment from My Wife and Kids where Damon Wayans Jr. makes a guest appearance and his dad, Damon Wayans Sr., who plays the lead, gets a little too into the physical comedy. In one scene, Damon Sr. playfully smacks Damon Jr., but things got a little too real and Jr. actually hurt himself. Oops. Even though it wasn't planned, Jr. kept going with the scene and it ended up being captured on camera. It's one of those classic comedy gone wrong moments, but it actually made the scene even funnier because it was totally unscripted. The whole thing shows how comfortable and natural the father-son duo was with each other. Way too much of a playful dynamic, clearly. Next, Carlton from Fresh Prince.
Officer, honestly, I don't see the need to. Hey, get out of the car now.
That scene from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where Will and Carlton get pulled over. Yeah, it's a gut punch and one of the realest moments on the show. The episode dives into racial profiling, flipping the script on the usual laughs to tackle something way more serious. Will and Carlton borrow a Mercedes and bam, they're pulled over, arrested, and thrown in jail for literally no reason. It's a wake-up call for Carlton, who's been pretty clueless about how the world works outside his bubble.
Just trying to do their jobs. Will, don't get all bent out of shape. Man, you ain't learned nothing this weekend, did you?
Here's the crazy part. Alfonso Ribeiro, Carlton, later shared that the actors playing the cops went way harder than expected during the jail scene. Like, we're talking full-on grabbing and pushing. It felt so real that it shook both Alfonso and Will Smith in the moment. That unplanned intensity added a whole new layer to the scene, making it hit even harder. Carlton's whole sheltered, "this can't happen to me" mindset gets wrecked. Will's street smarts clash with Carlton's privilege.
We would have had a map. We wouldn't have had to drive 2 miles an hour trying to find a freeway entrance, and we wouldn't have been stuck.
It shows Carlton realizing that no matter how rich or innocent he is, people still judge him by the color of his skin. Next, everybody hates Chris.
Morning, Cocoa Puffs. Caruso had made my life a living hell. He had beaten my ass every day, and nothing kept him away.
So there's this unforgettable moment from Everybody Hates Chris, where Chris, Tyler James Williams, is supposed to take a punch in a scene. But plot twist. The punch wasn't supposed to land for real, but it totally did. And you can tell from his reaction that he was genuinely shocked and kind of hurt.
He had beaten my ass every day, and nothing kept him away.
What makes it even funnier is that Tyler, who's got perfect comedic timing, totally stayed in character. It added this extra realness to the scene, blending awkwardness with humor in a way that made it even better. The directors actually kept the punch in the final cut, and honestly, it worked perfectly. Everybody Hates Chris was all about mixing over-the-top humor with real-life struggles, and this accidental hit was the perfect example of how sometimes the unplanned stuff just makes the scene. Even though it wasn't scripted, it totally captured that moment of chaos the show was all about. Next, Bernie on the Bernie Mac Show.
He ain't got no business out there, he don't know what he's doing. Tired of this. Ain't here for no foolishness.
On the Bernie Mac Show, Bernie's rants about parenting became a fan favorite. And honestly, it's easy to see why. They weren't just scripted lines. Most of them were based on Bernie's real-life experiences as a father figure. His improv skills kicked in, and he'd go off script, pouring out his actual frustrations about parenting. It made everything feel real and raw. In the show, Bernie played a tough love uncle suddenly stuck with raising his sister's 3 kids. His rants about disciplining them were hilarious, but you could tell they came from a real place. Bernie had been a father figure to his own nieces and nephews, so he brought all that into his role.
Man, if somebody started picking on you, you got to show you can take it. You got to come right back.
And the best part? Some of his funniest moments were totally unscripted. He'd go off on these rants, adding extra lines or extending the monologue to let all his parental frustrations spill out. Next, Red Fox on Sanford and Son. Red Fox was legendary for his humor, and one of his most iconic bits on Sanford and Son was pretending to have a heart attack. His character, Fred Sanford, would clutch his chest and dramatically announce that he was having a heart attack every time something went wrong, usually for comedic effect. It became one of the show's most memorable running gags, with Foxx selling it every time with his classic humor. But here's where it gets eerie. Foxx ended up passing away from a real heart attack while filming The Royal Family. He collapsed on set during a scene, and it was a total shock, especially since his heart attack joke had been a huge part of his act for years. Next, Monique on the Parkers.
Kim's our soloist. Now go on, baby, sing Mama's favorite song.
Monique, aka the unforgettable Nikki Parker from the Parkers, had a hilarious slip-up on set that wasn't planned at all. But instead of redoing the scene or cutting it out, the producers decided to keep it in because it fits so perfectly with the show's funny, real tone. Known for her bold energy and comedic timing, Monique turned what could have been a simple mistake into a laugh-out-loud moment. She stayed in character and rolled with it, making it look like it was all part of the act, not a slip at all. The fact that they kept it in just shows how the Parkers wasn't afraid to embrace the unexpected and keep things fresh. Next, Tahj Mowry on Smart Guy.
Who got a kick? Goose got a kick.
Tahj Mowry, aka TJ Henderson from Smart Guy, had a funny, totally unplanned moment on set when he accidentally bumped his head on a prop. During one of those physical comedy bits, he took a little misstep, but instead of breaking character, he just rolled with it and kept going. He said, "It was pretty funny actually. I tripped on something and bumped my head. Instead of stopping the scene, I just kept going and rolled with it." The director loved it and kept it in the final cut. I guess that's what they call improvising, right? Plus, it shows the supportive, laid-back atmosphere on set. Instead of freaking out, they all laughed it off and kept the energy up, making sure the show stayed on track. The slip wasn't part of the plan, but it definitely made the scene even more memorable. Next, a different world.
Are you saying this is none of my business?
There you go.
Here's a hilarious, a different world moment you might not have heard about. During one scene, a small fire randomly broke out on set. Instead of freaking out, the cast, led by Kadeem Hardison and Jasmine Guy, just stayed in character and acted like the fire was part of the scene. Jasmine Guy opened up about the chaos, later saying, "It was pure chaos for a second, but we were so locked into our characters, we just kept going with it." Kadeem even improvised it, saying, "Whoa, is that a fire?" And we all started running around but never broke character. It was actually pretty funny because the cameras just kept rolling. The fact that they kept it together, even with a real fire on set, just shows how committed and professional the cast was. Talk about turning an emergency into comedy gold. Next, we have the Fresh Prince again, but Geoffrey this time. Remember that time Geoffrey from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air tried to jump over the couch? Yeah, Joseph Marcel, aka Geoffrey the butler, actually went for it for real. And guess what? He hurt himself mid-jump. But instead of calling it quits, the dude powered through and finished the scene like a champ. This moment? Pure dedication. While most actors would have used a stunt double for a move like that, Marcel was all about putting the physicality into Geoffrey, even if it meant taking one for the team. And honestly, that's what made his character even more lovable. He wasn't just a typical butler. He was a real, committed, funny dude.
If I were to judge you by your costume, I should guess you were some kind of...
Yeah, the jump wasn't perfect, but that's what made it even better. They kept the scene in, and it just added to Geoffrey's charm. It showed Marcel's willingness to roll with the punches, literally, and honestly, it just made the whole show feel more fun and real. And lastly, Steve Harvey's show on The Steve Harvey Show.
Hello, Steve.
Steve Harvey's contagious laugh was basically its own character. He would often crack up mid-scene, especially during improv moments, or when something totally unexpected went down on set. Instead of cutting those moments out, producers decided to keep them in because they made the show feel more real and fun. His natural reactions added an extra dose of humor and made the whole thing more down to earth. It wasn't just about sticking to the script. It was about the energy he brought, and honestly, it made the show way more entertaining. This worked perfectly for the show's mix of scripted moments and improv. Steve and the rest of the cast had such a good chemistry that even his random bursts of laughter became part of the charm. It wasn't a mistake, it just made the show feel like you were hanging out with friends.